Nicely from the top. 2 minutes or less.
All right.
Welcome.
Let's do an
Top
actual
Gun.
summary.
Top Gun from the top.
Yep.
Great movie, right?
Uh-huh.
Want to watch it again?
Welcome back to the effing movie podcast. I say that because we didn't have the mic on for the first 12 minutes of the video. Don't worry.
We're professionals.
We got it this time.
We haven't done that once before.
We'll put it in the lower third, just playing, so you can just see the non-audio.
We didn't do
of us
that for
talking
Brothers, so we're not doing it for
try and
this
guess
one.
what we were saying.
Yeah, you can guess what we were saying on this one. But anyway, we're going to be a lot more concise on this one than we usually are because we just finished exactly explaining all the things we just said.
Yes.
So, the movie we are watching, firstly, welcome everybody. This is Dylan, Mason, Nathan, and Price, not in that order.
He did that
We're
last
watching
time.
Midsummer.
Yeah, we're not.
We did this bit.
we already did this. It's not Midsummer. It's Ari Aster's other movie. It's Hereditary.
But we got all these flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of flowers.
Lovely.
It was-
Speaking of other terrible movies, though, I have these two lovely movies to divvy out to whomever I choose, based on criteria I will come up with as we go. It is
lands it anyway?
It is
Points
Insidious:
don't
The
matter.
Last Key. I don't know which one this one is in the
It's
sequels.
like the third or fourth one.
I have no idea. And this is called The Bad Nun. And this has no
Maybe
one you've
even
ever
fifth.
heard of before. My mother got these for me at a
Yeah,
yard
yeah,
sale
at
for
least
50
four.
cents. And personally, I think she paid $5 too much. So whoever I want will be getting these for any reason I deem worthy of it.
Okay.
So the
Yep.
summary of this movie, you guys should definitely have watched this movie.
Definitely watch
It
it.
has it has some very intense points in which if you haven't seen them yet, you're lucky. But basically, it's about a family that's grieving the loss of a grandmother, and it eventually alludes to another family member getting into an accident and dying, and then it turns very spiritual, and it turns out to be a Hell Lord's pagan cult that requires a sacrifice and requires the passings of basically the rest of the family. Yeah, it's
You said it starts getting pretty spiritual, and I'm thinking of like a gospel meeting or something.
I mean,
spiritual
this
in
is
a
not
dark
it.
way.
Spiritual is
It's
a
a
spectrum,
gospel.
man.
It's a gospel, really. This movie.
This is a church movie.
You should watch it. And
Yeah, somebody who's been to church. It's spot on. We got the naked people in the attic in the back. We got all that kind of
so
stuff.
the first naked person that you see is the
is it?
blonde-headed guy
Yeah.
with the big smile that was hiding basically
On the corner?
Like he was
Yeah.
in the corner. Well, so he was hiding, but
I don't
at
remember
the,
this.
Oh,
You
yeah.
didn't see that?
He's like
the
barely
funeral.
visible.
There was like just a middle-aged naked man with like a yellow slick back haircut and just smiling as big as he could.
When?
He is also at the funeral,
Mm-hmm.
standing behind the casket, smiling just as much then too, while everybody else is looking sad.
Price, do you remember
I
when
missed that.
the little girl, the little sister, whatever's like looking at the grandmother in the coffin, and then you just see this weirdo smile? That's the guy.
I
that's
definitely
naked.
remember that.
That's
Yeah.
the guy that's naked later.
Yeah.
Did you catch any or many at all of the naked people hiding in the shadows at the end? Of
Oh yeah,
that?
there's a lot of them.
That's
They're
the
all
part
over
that
the
that's the part
place.
that scared me the most.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
like I was in the mode like when the mom sawing her head off. I was like, that's pretty crazy. And then like it just cuts to the other people like in the attic, like all those naked people. That kid jumping out of the window is the most realistic thing I saw that whole
Yeah.
movie.
That's a
like,
good point.
That's
Yeah.
that's
You're not
exactly
going
where
down
I'm
the same
going.
way you came up. That's for
like,
sure. You're going out a new way.
Nope, I am not going back through this house. No, I am not.
Yeah, and then it shows that goofy shot of the mom floating up into the treehouse. I was like, all right, I'm signing off on this movie, but I'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
in a minute.
Yeah. So we had previously covered our gripes on Ari Aster sitting in scenes for too long, and for a lot of this movie, I feel as though that he does it unnecessarily. But there are some highlights that I think he does a really good job on that. But Nathan's going to take that train.
Yeah,
No,
Nathan's gonna do this one.
All right, with
Oh,
no
boy.
interruptions.
Okay.
Here
boys.
comes the
Here we
train.
go.
Here
I
comes the
got
train.
it. I got it this time.
Thanks.
Thanks for the intro.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one scene in particular that they do sit on for quite a long time. I do feel as though it is earned, and it is the death scene of the younger sister. The older brother's wanting to go to this party. His mom insists that the little sister has to go with him, and while at the party, he wants to like go smoke a bowl with his friends, so he just convinces his sister to leave him alone and go eat some cake. The cake was full of nuts, and at the funeral earlier, they allude to the fact that the little girl is very allergic to nuts, so cue her getting an anaphylactic shock, and the brother having to take her and try and rush to the hospital as she is slowly suffocating in the back seat. She freaks out, rolls the window down, puts like half of her body out of the car
Out
to
of the
try and just,
window.
like, catch air in her mouth.
An
I guess.
unnecessary amount of body outside the window.
She caught a lot of air.
Like, I thought
Huh?
she was gonna fall out of this car. Is what I thought was about to happen. But
Strike one.
not quite. That's
Yeah.
not quite how it goes. So as this chaos is just happening behind him, he suddenly looks forward and sees a dead deer in the road, swerves to try and avoid it, and wouldn't you know it, there is a light pole right beside him as he does that.
Wouldn't you just know it?
So
Golly
the
gee.
sister gets caught by that, and her head stays by the pole as her body stays in the car. And after that, there's this very long scene of just looking at the brother as he is slowly coming to grips with what has just happened and the fact that he basically just killed his sister. And it's a scene that I do think is really good, and it's earned, and it's there to like really make you feel what he's feeling, or at least like take the time to think about what it would be like if you were in his shoes.
That was my favorite scene of the movie. That's when like I had a lot of respect. Like, this isn't just like little B-list actors or something. Like, this kid, I thought he absolutely crushed it. Him and the mom. But talking about that scene, like, I thought that was totally earned, and that's what got me emotionally interested in the movie. Was that point where like you could see what he's going through, and then him just like getting home and then just going to his bed. Like, he didn't call anyone. He didn't do anything because
He barely put that car in park as he got out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he was so like
he was just zoned out.
disconnected.
He was in so much shock. Like, I mean, I understand. Like,
Yeah, totally.
if you're just watching this movie, like, totally, like, not invested, I'd be like, he should have called his parents. He should have done all this. But, like, in real life, like, a kid like that going through such a traumatic event
Who's
and
super
being the
high.
one to do it, yeah.
Also being super high, yeah. The dissociation is definitely earned there. Like, the total just
And then that scream that the mom does whenever she, like, I don't know how
that was
that,
the Midsummer scream.
I don't know how that actress did that, but that was awful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty hard-hitting scene.
Yeah.
For sure.
Best part of the movie for me, definitely.
That being said, though, there is just chunks of other times that Ari Aster just takes the scenes and sits in it, and it just feels very unnecessary. I think at times there's the intent of trying to build, like, that suspense feeling, but it doesn't ever feel like it's doing much. Or sometimes it's, okay, well, this character is going through something in this scene, so we're going to go ahead and let him sit there for it. And while I think there's realistic, I think with a film you need to balance it out between being realism and good, or just being extra, and I felt like a lot of times it just felt like extra.
Well, and the other thing I will say too about the sitting for long moments to build suspense is, to me, this movie spends a lot of time building suspense, like a lot of time building suspense, to then not actually scare you.
Yeah.
Like,
So-
this movie is not scary for most of it. Like, I would barely class this as a horror movie until maybe towards the end, where it does get a little more spooky. It's a traumatic movie.
Yeah. In the first half of the movie, there might be two scary-ish parts. And you guys remember, like, whenever the lights were off and they were seeing the figures back in the corners and stuff. Like, to me, that's definitely not, terrifying. But to get you into the movie a little bit, you're like, oh, okay. Like, honestly, one of these movies...
It still pulled me out.
Yeah, one of these movies would sit there and just push that in your face and just try to
One of
scare
these movies.
scare the piss out of
Once
you
this
in
movie
the first
hits-
couple minutes.
Once it starts doing horror, it never stops doing horror.
Exactly.
This movie starts doing horror, stops doing horror for a while, and then starts doing
I
horror.
don't think it starts doing horror until about halfway through. It just kind of
I guess it's more setup.
yeah,
with
it's
it,
like a hey, you know what you're in for, but this
Like,
is it.
things are a little off. You can't quite place it. Those scenes to me almost play, because it's always in the dark, always in a corner. It almost plays on the idea of, like, am I just seeing something out of the
Psyche.
corner of my eye? Like, the
Right.
kind of stuff that happens to a lot of people at night, where you are seeing shapes in things that aren't
Hearing
actually
noise.
there.
Right.
Like when the brother sees his sister in the corner and her head rolls forward, and it turns out it was just
soccer ball.
like a soccer ball or basketball or something
Yeah.
just bouncing on the floor.
Yeah, there are a couple moments there where I liked what they were going for on that one, where it's just, again, the subtle moments in the dark where it's very subtle thriller. You know you're just supposed to feel tense, and you're not really supposed to feel why, which is typically my favorite feeling in the horror thriller genre, is Never the reveal, never the big moment, just the feeling you're supposed to have up until then. And when they can do that, hold that for a long time, and then give something that's worth the payoff, I think that's great. Sometimes...
I think this one held too long.
Right, that's the point. It was a long, long note, and then it went from, okay, I'm feeling thrilled, to, okay, get to the point. And that's where I feel like this movie starts teetering away from its strings. And I do think this movie has some, though. Like, whenever it hits its strides, it can be pretty damn spooky. And one of the things I actually really did like is Toni Collette, the mom's character's arc, where she's grieving, she's frustrated, she's grieving again, and then you can tell that she's just become so irrational after all of these things going on, and she's a pretty unlikable character, justifiably so. Mm-hmm. But then she gets to the point where, like, she's understanding and she's reading all of the witchcrafty stuff, and this is like towards the tail end of the movie, so there's a lot of her just bantering and just kind of being kind of the antagonist of the film, really.
Oh yeah.
But then we get to the part where she's like, oh shit, there's seances and I can bring her back, and then it starts going bad and she starts researching it more, and she's like, no, I need to fix it, this is like beyond our control, we can't just call the cops.
She was too far gone at that point for anyone to have actually believed her and sought help from her.
Right.
She had already basically played all of her cards from the crazy town, and then like by the time she figured it out, no one believed her anyway.
Yeah, and I like that there's that kind of realistic thing where sometimes it's just like, and they just exposition dump it through a certain other means, but in this way they kind of give it to you pretty organically. Mom's like, the seance people are essentially baiting her into finding a little bit more, but just enough for her to be doing what she needs to be doing. And then whenever she realizes it's too far gone, or like even during the seance part, whenever like I guess like the daughter or whoever took over her body for a little bit, and then like she jars back in, which I think is actually a really solid scene.
I can't. Like, I know that there were some, like, dragging on parts, but I do think that most scenes were earned in this movie because they came with some of that little bit of exposition. Like, for instance, like, her and those little model figures, right? Like, those, I could argue, maybe strode on a little bit too long, but a lot of the times you had dialogue in that was important. Like, for instance, at one point she just drops a bombshell on Joan. Yeah, my son and I, we don't really get along very well, like we used to, because one time I had a bottle of paint thinner and a fucking match that I was about to light them on fire. Like,
As
that,
you do
that
when you
scene is
sleepwalk.
earned. At that point, that scene is like, okay, you know what? They did a little weirdly, but okay, I'm in for that scene. And like a lot of the times, the father figure, which was the most relatable character in this whole movie, the most naive and the most innocent as well, but like a lot of the times, like you could tell that he was sort of playing into these scenes where she was just working in the shop, like she was kind of grieving, she was kind of frustrated. He was the medium for that. So this movie did drag on a little bit in the first half, but I do think at that halfway point, it is a gem afterwards. I mean, the tempo of it, like you said, the understanding of it. Toni Collette I hated her, for the most of this movie, but she was also spot on with everything that she was doing and everything that she was figuring out.
Well, so one thing I was kind of wondering as far as her character, they dropped that whole tidbit about her sleepwalking in that meeting with Joanne, and then they start to play with that later in the movie, but they it basically doesn't exist until she talks about it.
Yeah. Right.
And then it gives them the opportunity to do like some of that unreliable narrator stuff where you don't know whether or not it was dream
real,
or like what was going on for a couple of the scenes.
Yeah.
And that I feel like was a little annoying that they just were like, okay, we've told you about this. Now it's going to start happening.
Yeah, we can show
like
it to
they
you.
could have interwoven it in a little bit earlier too, and left you with more unreliable narration going on to where it could cast into doubt everything. Because her character, you could the whole time be thinking, maybe she's just crazy. And I think it would have been a lot easier to do that if they had used that unreliableness to keep you thinking, like, is any of this even really happening? Is she actually seeing any of this at all?
Yeah.
Like, what's actually going on? But they didn't actually pick that up until halfway through the movie.
As you all know, my main thing about movies, that the thing that puts them over the edge for me not liking the movie is if it feels too long. And one of my favorite movies is The Hateful Eight. I love those long movies that are earned. I love it. I've seen the director's cut. I very much enjoy it. but this movie like is just so long, and so many scenes just feel like they're drawn on for forever, and like because I was still pulling away until like the girl got her head taken off by the pole or whatever, because that scene, like those little clumps of scenes, like that 10 minutes was by far the best part of the movie for me, and then everything else just felt like just long, like the length of the movie. I didn't even look at the length of the movie after I was done. I was like, I don't care if it's an hour, I don't care if it's 3 hours. It feels so long, and it did not earn the runtime for me. It didn't pull me in at all, and nothing did for me, honestly.
So, side note away from the runtime, because that'll go more into the next segment, obviously. But there's a thought that I wanted to finish whenever Nathan was on the choo-choo train about the sister. So,
Choo-choo.
She was just a creepy looking person too.
She's perfectly cast.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
she does a great job for the time that she has on screen. She absolutely crushes it. But this movie does a really good job of keeping everything being realistic. Because within horror movies, there's a certain moment where you're like, if I'm ever in this situation, I probably just peace out. There's not a lot really keeping me here. If I have a kid or a daughter or something that's suddenly psycho and crazy, I can understand the perspective. And again, this is kind of like, nobody really knows that we're stuck in a horror movie until it's too late, and that's kind of the point. And I thought that's a great job with the parents and the kid.
Yeah.
But one of the things that does bother me is the sister being at the party. So, all right, with a grain of salt, I will understand that there was probably some developmental delays there, and she maybe not be the most perceptive with that. But she knows she has a peanut allergy.
Yeah.
And people with peanut allergies always are the most annoying people about it in the best way, because they know they will probably die if they get peanuts. There is a whole table. Whole fucking table.
It
A
shows
whole
them
thing.
chopping it up and everything.
Yeah.
It's like huge.
Literally,
Yeah.
here's the cake, which is like this big. Here's the dining room table, about this big, worth of peanuts, which is absurd.
It's really funny because I do remember seeing them slice a piece of cake, and I do remember like pebbles. in
Yeah,
it.
seeing
so,
little, like,
so
peanuts
that
and
I
stuff.
picked up on. I had no idea that there was a table full of nuts. So
I didn't catch what they were chopping up.
Yeah,
I
I
was like,
didn't-
that's so, like, why are they showing them
why do they
chopping
have
up a
chocolate?
bunch
Right.
of
Why do they
stuff?
have chocolate cake? Period. This is like a weird high school party. No
Yeah.
one was gonna bake that. Anyways, but I see what you mean. Like this girl should always have an EpiPen on her.
Yes, exactly
Anybody,
the other point I was going to say.
anybody.
If this is a girl that has a peanut allergy, 9 out of 10 of those people have a fucking EpiPen on
Yeah,
them.
like, how... Well,
should be
also,
one in the
how
car.
irresponsible of the family to not have one brought along
Right.
with them wherever she's going.
Like
you
her
said, in the
brother
car,
was
yeah.
with her.
Brother went with, and then there was...
honestly, what I figured was about to happen with that scene was he was going to go to the car with her and get an EpiPen out and, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the
care of
fact that
her.
he starts like flying down the road and
Yeah.
not doing, which, all right, the one other believable part to this in that one same scene is that he doesn't just call an ambulance or something like that. And I get that he's a
goes
teenager.
straight- yeah.
He's like stoned. He's at a party. He's like, fuck, I'm gonna lose so much street cred if I call cops and the ambulance is here. So I believe that entirely, that he just
Oh,
takes
yeah.
that drive.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're not gonna call the cops to a party like
Right, but the fact that she has to go there to begin with because she has a peanut allergy, doesn't ask, and then doesn't have an EpiPen, and doesn't do that. I'm like, these strangely is both its strength and its weakness. That this is the like most unbelievable part of the movie besides the culty stuff.
that. It also didn't have an EpiPen at the funeral, which like
No,
Yeah.
like, this
nobody
family-
has a damn
this
EpiPen.
family doesn't believe in
Well,
like
I guess
modern
that
science.
could have been, like, just alluding to how
Yeah,
just completely poorly ran this family.
Yeah.
how upset they've been lately.
Maybe Grandma was the one running this shit. No wonder Grandma was invested. She
Yeah.
was like, we all need to go because this family is letting. There's no.
she did
EpiPens
love
here.
that daughter.
Yeah,
Or
like.
that girl. She
Oh my
loved her.
gosh, what a.
So, did you all catch the little diorama scene of
Probably.
the grandmother, like, breastfeeding
Yeah.
the daughter?
Showing her.
Yeah,
So, like,
her
taking
child
her away,
away
like,
about-
while like her
Like Tony Collette, the mom, is in the bed right
while
next to her. or
she's like
something.
standing next to her, watching her do that.
Yeah.
Those dioramas, like, if I'm being honest, they were one of my favorite parts of this movie. Not that they were completely useful or necessary, but they, weirdly enough, were so beautiful. Like, the very first panning shot in,
Oh, the first one into the bedroom.
it was that room.
So I figured there was gonna be more of that.
Really?
Like the fact that it did that first time, I was like, oh, is
this
this
is gonna be a
movie gonna
dollhouse
like
story.
transition between rooms in
yeah.
this house by
Right.
like going out
Yeah.
and back in or something?
It's the only time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm beginning to realize this is an Ari Aster trope. Like, there's two tropes right at the beginning of it. He kind of gives the movie away and its story, like, and I didn't go back to watch that first scene to see, like, how many things are actually told in that little
There's
diorama.
probably a bunch.
There probably is, because in Midsummer, haha, puns and the flowers, like, the first
Tapestry.
painting, like, yeah, it tells the whole story of how it's going to all go with that. So I was betting that's probably the same thing with the diorama. But then, also, Ari Aster thing, he starts the movie by killing some family members, and then they're dead, dead, and then they're more dead.
And there's a scream fest.
Yeah, and then screaming ensues.
Which, by the way, before we get into the fat thick thing, like, what do you guys think about that dinner scene? Like,
Oh boy.
yeah.
Oh boy. Do I love that dinner scene. It's
Tell me
just,
about it.
That is just like, it's so cliche that the dinner table is where like the emotions that everybody has to come to a head. It can't be them just like sitting watching TV. It can't be them doing anything
I didn't
else.
see
It's
them
like,
watching TV this
oh,
entire movie.
man.
Did they even have a TV?
They didn't even have
Yeah,
a TV
they
in
had-
the
That
whole
is
house.
besides the freaking point. I am on my train now.
Go for
Okay.
it. Bring it on.
But it's just
Everybody-
like every movie, like I don't know why it's like the director's first movie or something where like oh, I don't know how else to have these people with differing emotions and conflicts going on to come to a head. Why don't they just have dinner together and they can yell at each other there?
I mean, maybe a lot of these directors grew up in a house where that is what
That's the
happens.
thing.
Maybe that is like that's
We-
a common trope because
Yeah.
that is a common feature of human life.
that none of us are accustomed
Right.
to because I'm
we,
not.
we maybe
Organically,
just
that
didn't
was the thing
experience it.
families valued. So, like, I could see where it was like, all right, high affluence, modern white family probably values this. They probably do dinners together and stuff like that. And this is the time where it naturally makes sense that normally they're going to be apart from each other all day, but they're going to eat together because they have to.
I don't hate the screaming matches at these
I
dinner
get tired
table
of it.
scenes. I really
I'm so
don't.
sick of
but it
I
is
am.
funny that we are starting to notice this absurd trend.
Right.
And I would almost like to keep a note of like all of these movies.
We're at 3 now, right?
We're at
It's
3.
This one.
Did you
is-
pick all of them?
Breakback Mountain was one of them now.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
I'm talking about Remember
Brothers.
Oh,
Remember
yeah,
Me?
bro.
Yeah, he's 2 for 3. He's 66.
Remember
Well,
Me didn't really
yeah.
have a dinner scene table. That was a conference table.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
Oh, true.
Yep.
Got it.
Loopholed. Got you.
Also, that
he
was
wins at
Dylan's
his
warning.
word.
Got you. Intervention.
Yeah.
anyways,
Intervention.
Yeah.
I love that scene. I think that the dad was obviously, like I said, the guy was just, he was going through it and
Yeah.
not going through his his mother-in-law's death. He obviously didn't care much about that. He was going through watching his family fall apart right in front of him.
But
and
he seemed like,
couldn't do
to me,
anything.
he seemed like too much of a surrogate for the audience. Like all
Yeah.
the other 3 people in his family, like were very distinct characters
Yep.
who had a very distinct personality. And the dad is kind of like Jim in The Office,
Yep.
where like there's one sane person in this whole situation and nobody else is in the least bit sane, but this one person that you're supposed to identify
I
with.
watched this movie 2 years ago, sorry Dylan, but like I forgot upon this rewatch that the father was even in the house. Like I thought that the
Yeah.
death was the father at first, and then then he showed up, and I was like, holy crap! I forgot he didn't have much of a role. But yeah, I know
He's-
what you mean.
He's there to act as us.
Yeah, he is.
Right.
the whole
He's
time.
there to be that grounding character
Right.
of like this is what a sane person would
Yeah.
be thinking in this situation.
He's not gonna believe so and so because
Yeah.
she's obviously nuts.
You,
right now.
you really don't need to flesh out those characters because again, we're supposed to be projecting onto something as sane human beings in the situation, and B, you do exactly to that point. You need something just to challenge how much crazy there is. Because if everything's absolutely crazy, then there's no rules. But if you know that you're still in this world because this character exists and he's trying to keep this family together, which again was very organic. You know, the entire time he felt like it was like, all right, so mom's gonna be losing her shit. I've got to support her. I don't even get to mourn my own daughter, and I got to support the son
I've got a
because
teenage
he's the one who
son
did it.
that
Right.
has killed his little daughter, or
Right.
his little sister that he actually cared for.
But for me personally, like I want to be like looking like at this movie from the outside in. Like my favorite movies, like none of them are like there's a surrogate character for you. Like I don't need to feel
some
like
movies
I'm in this
have
movie.
that. Like it's, I mean,
Yeah, and
it's tough to sit there
I
and
mean,
pick and prod
the
through
movies that
movies.
don't have it can end up being kind of odd. There's a movie that came out recently with Nick Cage starring in it.
Hell yeah.
I have not seen it.
It's called The Color Out of Space. It's an
Damn, I
H.P.
haven't seen
Lovecraft story turned into a movie. And every single member of this family is insane. Like there is not the person grounding in reality. They're all making nonsensical decisions the entire time, and it feels like
Nathan's
it
next
is all just adrift in nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So you do kind of want somebody to be like, you want somebody to be the person that is clear-headed in a horror situation, because otherwise,
Otherwise, it's
like,
gonna be wild.
Yeah.
well, otherwise you don't feel like it's realistic at all,
I
because
feel-
you're like somebody is gonna be sane here, like somebody, like
not
not
gonna
maybe
make
not.
it.
Yeah, like maybe they're not going to make it,
Yeah.
but they're at least going to like play that straight role of society and like just general human nature and not the insanity that's unfolding around them.
Right. Even more so, I think that they're kind of, that needed trope in the horror movie verse where it's just like you need something to give you hope that there is an escape, right? Like this dad could at any point say, "You're fucking batshit crazy. I'm taking the kid in pizza now." And that's the only realistic aspect.
I will say that's another thing that I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I thought that he would just take the son and leave.
Mm-hmm.
He was very passive as a father. Like he let everything slide.
That seance you'd think would be the thing.
Yeah, that should have been the threshold for him. But instead, he waited for something to happen and then called them on and be like, "Hey, this kid is tripping out. He's seeing things. Thanks a lot. Like, I really appreciate you taking our son through this."
Yeah.
Click. Like, he just hung up on her instead of, like he said, taking him to a hotel, taking him.
Well, and he saw her doing like the little diorama of the girl dying.
That was
like
awesome.
that was
I like
ridiculous.
that scene.
Yeah, that was insane. And she defended it. Like she was like,
it's
obviously
like, no,
you're in the wrong.
It's just like it's just an objective look at what happened. It's like
No!
What do you like no. You don't make that.
Yeah.
You don't make the death scene of your daughter
You don't. There's
and
nothing
have
good.
like your son as a little miniature sitting in the car that killed her.
Right.
And the head was back there.
Oh yeah, she was like painting the blood on the street
Right.
in the conversation.
Very meticulously on that. But one last wrap up on,
Yes, please.
on this part is I want to just cover the end, little like sequence
Oh, you get the last
for this
word?
part. Well, I just want to introduce
We haven't
that.
said anything about it.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. The end sequence does need to be talked about
Yeah,
because
'cause-
that is
Yes.
the culmination of this
Yes, it
movie
does.
that was waiting like an hour and a half to get to and was the
Yeah.
most worthwhile part of it.
Oh yeah, like
You've earned it.
Or Price says that like his first, like I guess his favorite section was the sister getting like beheaded and really just keeping Borefest for like the next 45 minutes of the movie. Like the movie for me is like, boop, great, sister dies, flatline for a little bit, boom, and then we're up to naked people leading up to the house at night, and then I'm like, all right, that's a pretty. I love that shot for the record too. Like Ari Aster loves his naked people, like subtly.
Oh, dude,
not
just
subtly.
bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah.
what he
That's the
says.
scene that scared me the most, bar none.
Yeah, that.
Oh, dude.
So how
Cool.
quickly did you
Well
all
done.
notice the mom up in the corner of the room whenever the
Oh,
son
like
first wakes
pretty
up?
immediately, because I
Yeah.
realized after he wakes up and you see like the little like body like flailing like sideways in the dark whenever he's just kind of like staring off. I was just like, oh, this is gonna be one of those ones. There's something always going on. I need to be. It's like the Where's
Yeah.
Waldo of horror, right?
Mhm.
You're like, what's going on here?
And plus,
So-
the camera angle was weird. It was like
Yeah.
from the floor up instead of.
I wonder what kind of special effects had to be done for this because like it definitely wasn't true natural dark lighting.
Right.
They must have done some kind of post processing to make it to where it's like they look like they're in shadow, but they're
Vividly
not
dark.
like in shadow in the way that you actually would be in shadow.
Right. It's not realistically because you can see him
Because they
just
want
enough.
you to see them, but only just barely.
It's like whenever you get a game and it asks you to display
Adjust
the
the
brightness.
scale or-
Yeah, This
yeah.
cannot be seen. This should barely be seen. Like he
Right.
did that.
Yeah.
He made sure that you could just barely see it.
No, yeah, but I think that every bit of that section up until the last 2 or 3 minutes is it's so solid. Like I'm like, all right, this is what you come for the horror movie for, and dude, just the visuals alone. Like we talk about everything from whenever it gets into the attic is pretty fucking damn spooky. Like even up before then, I think the tension that again, this is where Ari Aster's spacing felt great. Like whenever you sit there and you just see the mom up in the corner for like what feels like forever, and you're like. But he's like, he knows, he's like, oh shit, there's something there. I know something's there, but if I turn around, then I know it's real.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep my eyes closed.
Yeah, I'm not going to turn that way. And I'm like, I kind of am with you on this one, guy. Like, I wouldn't turn that way either, except when you know you're going to die. That, and then the mom scene, when you just start hearing the noise of like her, like sawing her head off or whatever.
Her hitting her head against the attic door was
that
pretty
unreal.
metal.
Yeah,
Awesome,
that's the scene that I was.
That might have been the
really-
scariest part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the commitment and like she's on the ceiling.
Yeah, you
just
know
like
that she's gotta be
gripping
Spider-Man-ing
and
this
just
shit right now.
slamming her head into the attic door.
Oh, mine was the naked people. Easy.
Well,
Dong did get hung in this movie, which will
I
reflect
love
my
it.
score. So.
Yeah. But so were you alluding to like the treehouse scene, Dylan? Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
about that?
so
because if you don't, I will.
leaps out the window, and then you screen black it, and then you let the credits roll. That's it. That's
I could agree with that. I can because like,
But
like,
you're not.
Yeah,
Because you're saying I can, but I'm not.
No, because I do like that the soul, the little apparition, the little orb thing. That was kind of a cool touch. But then
I don't
He
know
goes-
why I just thought of Donnie Darko.
No,
Yeah,
it did have
it
Donnie
is.
Darko-ish
It's the same.
vibes to it too.
But like as soon as he went up to the treehouse, like I don't mind a little bit of that exposition because otherwise you would have been like, what were all these naked people doing? And you would have looked up and it would have said, oh well, the grandmother was a queen. Oh yeah, they needed the first true male son. Oh yeah, 3 people had to be decapitated, which evidently is a part of it. I had to read.
Oh yeah.
So that's why the mother, cut her head off. That's why the father, his head was cut off after he was charred.
So is
and the
this
daughter.
like? I do wonder. Did Ari Aster like pull this from like
He may have.
some actual satanic lore or
Because
something?
no one knows anything about satanic lore, and maybe. It's not like Greek mythology where there's,
I've read
so
Percy
many.
Jackson. You can't pull nothing on me.
Yeah.
You don't even know what that is.
Is that the
do you?
lightning
Percy
thief?
Jackson.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. It
It's
has
one with
Alexander Daddario.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a
it's
it's like a
Alexander
it's like a
Daddario.
meme that like little kids have read that so they know all about.
Yeah.
Which was
Greek.
funny. I never.
Oh,
read
because of
book,
the
but I
Greek
watched
mythology.
it.
I was
Yeah.
like, what? That had nothing to do with hell.
Teen Greek novels.
Hades.
Anyways,
Kinda.
so with the treehouse scene, I don't love it. If there's any part of the movie, spoiler, that I would cut, it would probably honestly be that.
That's it?
because, Yeah, because
Oh,
like
good lord.
for all of that intense, crazy, visceral horror, you had equal amount of him just in the treehouse with a broken nose, with the crown on his head, and the girl from The Leftovers, Joan, basically telling him and like explaining this and these people that were naked. Like it almost ended to me on a flat note.
Yeah.
To what it was. You're right. If it had landed, no pun intended, on him on the ground with maybe an orb going to him, that would have been a pretty cool like cliffhanger. But like I said, I would have gone straight to Wikipedia and been like, "What the fuck happened? I don't get it."
So the thing I would say about the treehouse scene is, I feel like I would have recomposed it to just make it feel creepier.
Yeah,
Because the
it was
statue
too nice.
wasn't like it. Yeah, it was all too clean and too
Mhm.
simple. It should have had like. I'm not remembering for sure if it did, but like just very cacophonous, just crazy music going on the whole time as like he's getting
think
crowned
so.
and like have like I don't know like some kind of corpse statue behind it. Like make things
Maybe
look
maybe the
way
3
more
heads
disturbing.
or
Right.
something.
Yeah, like the 3 heads. You
Yeah.
know, like if it were a much more disturbing and visceral scene, I think that would have made for a better ending with just like shrieking horrible music as the crown's being put on him and then fade
cut
to
to black. Yeah.
Don't even explain it. Don't
Yeah.
even say what you're doing.
Yeah. The added dialogue for that last scene is really weird.
It's an
Like,
exposition,
maybe
though.
a pan of like the Queen Leah, like that picture that you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, and then like I agree. I think the whole ending could have been done a little
Yeah.
bit differently, or maybe not at all. Dylan, you're right.
I
Either
could
way.
I could see where even if they just panned on the Queen for even a split second, that you could say, well, Ari Aster seems like one of these
There it
contrarian
is,
types
yeah.
where it's just like, I won't do it because that's too close to The Shining. Like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what they did with Jack and like the full big picture and that one. And he's like, oh, I probably don't want to do this because he's that. Like, there's a couple decisions I think are done creatively just to be different, and I don't think that it always helps. But we've talked at length about this for a good long while, so let's
This
get
is-
into
this
a
is
very
good.
quick segment of Fat, Thin, and Perfectly Fit. I think we are pretty mostly unanimous on this, but we'll start with Mason.
I know Mason keeps being difficult, so let's
No,
see if
no,
he's more
I
difficult.
agree. I do think it's fat. You can trim or re-edit the last 5 minutes, and if you do cut anything from the first, maybe hour 5 minutes, maybe cut like some of the Toni Collette scenes. Not everything that she had on screen was like real purposeful and real informative. It was just like for instance, her scene at the losing a loved ones meeting where she was like, my father killed himself, my brother killed himself, my mother was a schizophrenic, my uncle was, and just I kind of needed that because she was very not, I don't know, she wasn't pleasant. So like I liked that.
Yeah, you need a reason to kind of say,
Yeah,
oh,
I mean,
this is why she's
paint the
unpleasant.
picture for me. But like you're right, like Toni Collette's scenes maybe for me just trim them down a little bit in the first half. I loved everything mostly from about a third of the way to the end. So
Fat movie. Pretty much what Mason said. I cut more. It doesn't go to the. It doesn't even go to the tree house. There we go. And there's definitely chunks in the middle that I just felt like, if nothing else, cutting those scenes that sit whenever it didn't need to in half, or even a fourth, would have done, I think, a lot of wonders in this movie. Where there were times where it didn't need to sit there for suspense or anything like that. Just cut it. Gone. All right, cool. But yeah, there's definitely scenes that come to mind, kind of what Mason described. But if it didn't really serve the exposition part of it, I think that it probably could go. I mean, it runs long enough that you probably don't need all of it. So, fat movie.
I mean, of course, I've said it's a fat a million times, and I agree with everything you all said. But you're talking about the exposition part as well, and they really they don't have hardly any exposition in the first half of the movie. It is very much like there's a little bit in the second half, but then it's really it's all exposition the last 10, 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I do not like that at all. Sprinkle some of it at the beginning, have a little bit of something. I just despise exposition dumps, and it does it really bad near the end.
I agree that they don't do it very much at all in the first half, but there are little tidbits where she finds her mom's things box,
that spiritual
book. Yeah. And and then she sees her mom in the corner. So there's weird Easter
but that's not
eggs,
explaining anything going on, right. Which is exactly the whole treehouse scene. Is them oh man, we forgot to tell you any of this. Why any of this is going on.
That was wrapping up horror movies for dummies. That treehouse scene was basically what that was.
Yeah, and I was not freaked out by it, and I'm still wanting to cut out a lot. And Nathan is wanting to go, so he can go.
Yep.
Okay, so yes, this movie is fat. It does sit on some scenes too long. I do also agree that this movie held its cards closer to its chest than it should have. It should have tipped its hand a little bit more, a little bit earlier. I don't even know if I really I don't think you necessarily would have needed to cut much if they had just tried to scare you a little bit more, because it spent so long just being suspenseful and just building up oh, is something gonna happen, but no, it's not for so much of the movie. If it had tipped its hand, given you a little bit more information about what's going on, even if it was just little things that you wouldn't even if it was just stuff where it's you see something in the background, which you said there are Easter eggs. I wonder, if maybe there are some things that I didn't pick up on the first watch. I'm sure that is the case.
Yeah.
But even on a first watch, this should have done a little bit more than what it did to show its hand and to scare you, to actually be the horror movie that I feel like it was supposed to be. But maybe that's not what he wanted. Maybe he didn't want it to be overtly horror.
Maybe not. Maybe he wanted more of
a family drama.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's say something about this family.
Family drama gone very, very wrong.
At the dinner table, it's a family drama.
That's true.
Oh, it has to be.
Yeah, family drama.
All right, Mason, you got our special little segment here for us.
I have 2 questions.
That we have no idea what he's gonna ask.
Yeah, I probably should have asked you guys, but I think this is more of a funny thing.
Okay.
Who would have been the scariest character to have chased him through the fucking house? And do you think that the mom was the worst person that could have chased him?
All right, who's going first?
Nathan. He's giddy.
I mean, I don't.
What do you mean by worst? The scariest?
Okay, so that part
are
was
we talking
scary.
of the family?
Of anyone that was introduced. And I'm talking, anything. So, obviously, they turned the music way up. They did the run through the house scene. They did the tripping and the falling. He was obviously scared, and that was a very scary part. But, my answer, for instance, is the smiling guy.
Oh, that is actually what I would say, too. The naked smiling guy, yeah. Oof.
Yeah, because
what a freak.
That guy was terrifying from the funeral. I was like, that guy's a pedophile.
He stood out at that funeral immediately. I was like, what is with this dude back there?
I never saw him naked either.
Well, it was right before the chase scene. It was
Yeah.
like the mom was up in the corner being all weird.
Yeah, it's up here.
And
he's
right
up here,
before
he's
that, I think he was like in the
He
closet
was standing
space.
in
this,
like
open
a little
door.
shadowy corner,
Yeah.
just naked. That was the first dong.
with the
first
smile.
dong in the
it
movie.
was.
Hanging dong.
How I missed Dong?
Yeah.
Anyways, Dylan, what's your answer?
Skip me.
Yeah, it's fine. So, no, yeah, I think Mom's the scariest one with it. That guy is super scary, but I think he's done right, and I think he's scary because you don't give us too much of him.
Exactly, that's true.
Mom being the one chasing him after he sees that Dad is dead is like, there's no hope left. He's like, oh my God, all right, Dad's dead. Sister's definitely dead. Still dead. Grandma, been dead.
Super dead, decapitated dead.
And all the only one left out here should be Mom, and she's chasing me. Yeah, this is scary. Like,
Yeah, this is scary.
Fuck all this reason.
right.
I don't know.
I like that it's.
Well, he
it's
also
Mom
has
now.
a lot of built-up reasons to be afraid of his mom.
Right. Mom's
We're
already
gonna
spooky
light him on fire.
Yeah.
way before any of the terrible things started happening to this family, and then she stays spookier. So yeah, I dig it. Mom
I don't know
should-
why he doesn't lock his door at night after.
Yeah,
after that first
tried to set him
incident,
on fire.
I think
It's
that
like
would have been a reasonable request.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, can you install a lock on my door?
Just
Remember
like
that
the
time?
biggest one.
Yeah, Mom was gonna set us on fire.
Yeah.
Remember the thing that she does at night that could potentially
Walks
kill
around.
anyone?
Murders specifically me.
And the little girl was like evidently in the same bed or something because it
Yeah.
was when they were
well,
young.
yeah.
yeah, it said when they were young and living
Yeah.
like in the same bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Price.
Both.
Price.
Speaking of the little sister, that's who I think would have been like the scariest, worst person to chase him through the house. Like maybe like her looking very decrepit, maybe like her neck barely hanging on, something like that. But he's just had like so much trauma. Like
Is
with
she headless
her
or does she have
particular.
her head?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like maybe her head's like she's got to have her head.
Right.
And maybe she's like clicking her tongue at him as she's chasing him through the house or something.
The tongue
But
click.
that's who I think would be the worst for that instance because I think that would thoroughly freak him out. And then that would set up, I think, for even more of being spooky whenever his mom is in the attic just sawing her head off.
I love hate that answer because part of me is just like, yeah, I think that symbolically can line up really well. I mean, that's the source of a lot of his
He
trauma.
confided in her.
Yeah.
You know, like he was obviously the closest one in the family to her, vice versa.
Equally so, she's not as physically intimidating, and he's already bopped her
True.
head once, so I could just see him sucker kicking that head again and just saying, all right, 2 for 2, let's just wrap this one up. I'm terrified, and I'm just
No
on
treehouse.
instinct." Yeah.
Other question: was this the scariest movie that you guys have seen on this podcast?
On this
I'm
podcast?
going first. Go for
it,
it is
yeah.
hands down Sinister. I
figured you'd say that.
I cannot tell you how many times I've like told people like that is the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's including Paranormal Activity when I was like 10. It's bar none the one that has freaked me out the most, and that was like a year ago when I was 26. So yeah, I didn't finish the movie. Like I had to stop the movie, let the night go on, and then in the morning I watched the ending of it on YouTube. I'm like, no, that one messed me up because I like in every horror movie I was like, just leave. You're stuck in this house. Like it's not that bad. Just leave.
Yeah.
And then like it got to the attic and they're like, oh, like this creepy thing is showing you like that's exactly what he wants you to do. That's when I went, nope. Turned that right off and I cuddled up with
Fuck off my
Caesar.
screen.
I cuddled up with Caesar and went to sleep. So that is
Sleeping is the wrong answer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awful.
Dylan, you go next. We're going in reverse order.
Yeah, it's probably Sinister still. So this is pretty high up there, though. This is, I would say, the top 3. We haven't put a lot of like super spooky, scary movies in the one that.
It's a lot of gore most of the time.
Yeah, it's typically more gore or something like that. It's never meant to be like like psychologically like jarring and scary. So yeah, I mean for that reason, this is probably like number 2. Sinister is a pretty strong pick as far as this podcast goes.
Yeah.
Record could count too. I don't know if anybody's ever.
Yeah,
actually
record.
I'll say that.
The like last bits of record, I feel like it could. It's
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah,
it's
well,
too
the-
actiony in the
The
middle.
record, like
Yeah.
if you've seen it,
I agree.
maybe already, like that's
Right.
another big part of it too. Like you got to think about it, like your first watch, and like you said, Bryce, how it affects you on that first watch, and like like record for probably me and Dylan and you too, Bryce. It's different the second or third time through, but
Nathan looking through the list to double check.
Yeah, he's
I'm
trying to
just-
even think of
I,
one.
I am kind of. I don't really get spooked with movies.
Yeah.
Is the thing, and Sinister is like. I mean, it's really solid. It's probably one of the best ones. I was just kind of hoping I could think of something different, but
Yeah.
honestly, yeah. I mean, if there's one that was on. Oh no, 10 Cloverfield Lane was real good.
that one was
I'm not saying good. Talk about scary.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
well,
but-
like as far as like
Oh, for
setting
like
you on
tension and
edge,
thriller and
Yeah,
keeping
it
you
was
in
a
the
like-
dark.
Are you
Yeah.
including the aliens, or are you just doing John Goodman?
just John Goodman.
Okay,
Yeah.
Like
I'm more on board
John
now.
Goodman had the most intimidating presence I think I've ever seen
Because
in
it's
a movie.
because it's such a small confined space, and
Right.
he takes up so much
Couldn't
room.
Yeah.
go anywhere. Like,
And
you
it's
were
so
gonna
crazy
run
that
into
like
him.
he's the dad on Roseanne, who like most people
Yeah.
love.
John
and
Goodman
somehow-
has range though, dude.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
He-
yeah,
I mean,
that
he-
really showed it, and
Yeah.
that one I do think does for me the best job of like making you feel like there is a terrifying presence on the screen.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid. Mason.
I'm gonna go this one. The only problem with this one is just that like there's so much of the movie that isn't scary. Like Sinister, like we were talking about, like you said earlier, Nathan, it showed its cards early. It actually gave you some of that suspense and some of that scare way early on. With the tape at the very beginning, if you guys remember, Sinister is like
right. It starts with it.
The tree branch and like the family hang, like that's a lot, you know. And then from there, it very well paces itself. This one, I do think that it's very earned in like that last 30 minutes. I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to go with this one, but Sinister's very close. And this one I think is just a better story. Sinister's great. It's got Ethan Hawke. Couldn't tell you who else is in that movie because they don't matter.
Vincent D'Onofrio for like 4 minutes as he's the professor.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Law and Order man.
Yeah.
I think that this is just a better story than Sinister. But that's all I've got.
One thing I will say too about this movie, as far as the scare factor, this movie plays on what I would call Christian mythology, and oftentimes I always find myself just more interested by somebody's take on the Christian mythos
Sure.
than afraid of it.
Sure.
So I'm always just more like curious about like how they're going to take that and like what they're going to do with it more
like,
so than
maybe Paranormal Activity could be that same way where you're like, you know, depending on what the exposition will be, is it going to even be spooky or are you more so just like,
this is interesting.
yeah, this is cool how this person
Right.
kind of figures it out.
But I kind of fell off without Paranormal Activity because I watched like up until 3, and the first one doesn't give you hardly anything at all.
It literally doesn't.
And then by the third one, like you
Third
know,
one,
it's like
they're really
it's like a
telling you the
witch
cult.
demon cult, and that's when I signed off, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's like that's how I am with horror movies though. Like when it's in your head, like I'm very much interested in that. But when like Insidious is the best example for me because like I was freaked out the entire movie until like there's that scene where the red demon thing pops behind the lady, and I'm like, that is dumb. And I haven't watched any of them since then.
The monster reveal can really make or break a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some VR horror games where it's spooky and you're on edge until you see the monster, and then suddenly you're just like,
You ruined my scare
we could've
orgasm.
spent
it's like
some
you
time
should
on
have
this.
not even shown me this.
Right. Well,
We do have to do scores at some point.
yeah.
That's-
Nathan,
oh, shit.
I think you're tying in perfectly talking about the Nathan or the horror parts in which you like and dislike. So go ahead and lead
So
on
keep
scores.
on going. Keep that train
Yeah.
rolling.
Choo choo.
Choo.
So, I mean, not the worst movie I've ever seen. Overstays its welcome by quite a bit. Does some interesting things. Very good acting. Overall, it's not one that I plan on coming back to, but I didn't think it was bad. So I'm going to land at a 6.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, I've been saying how much I dislike this movie, about how long it is, how it only like it the only part that scared me was like when he went up into the attic for that like couple minutes or whatever that he was in there, if that, and then like he jumped out the window. Like when I think of this movie, I'm gonna think of 2.5 different scenes. I'm gonna think of the kid right after he killed his sister. I'm definitely gonna think of that part. I'm definitely gonna think of him just getting up to the attic and the mom sawing her head off or whatever, and then the other one is when she's doing that diorama of the car crash or
Yeah.
whatever. I remember that part. I was like, what is happening here? You are some kind of psycho lady.
Oh, yeah.
But again, this movie was not for me. Again, it's a horror movie, so I'm not going to like it. Never going to watch it again. I'm not going to recommend it to anybody. I was just telling his roommate a second ago that like I didn't like this movie anyway. So this movie is probably going to be about 3.5 for me.
Gotcha.
Okay. This movie has like 2, maybe even 3 peaks, but there's a lot of drag in the middle that makes it really hard to score too high. But then it hangs on.
It's not Tom Hardy though,
lot
so cancel that out.
No, it's not. I mean, it doesn't have to be Tom. It doesn't have to be attractive dong. Listen, it's not about me saying great dong, 10 out of 10.
Super good.
Super cool dong. It's the fact that they go ahead and
dong.
do it. You know what? Because we live in a world where there's plenty of nudity on the girl side, and that's kind of like the trope, especially in bad horror movies.
Yes.
Let's just get
Thanks
the girl top.
killing
Thanks killing.
the first second of the movie.
Yeah, it's just boobs, right? That's like the trope. So I respect going to the other side of the spectrum and showing some dong. You know, whatever. I respect that. So that being said, it shows dong. Ari Aster loves showing weird old dong, though. I mean, whatever. It's not preference, but he just does it.
He just does it.
But there are some parts in here that are super actually spooky. And the last attic run and all that stuff, I'm like, oh man, this is like, again, I'm pretty good with horror at this point, and very few times do I feel like, but yeah, no, the creepy guy in the shadows, followed by mom, fall to the attic, and then her chopping her head off with that one is pretty freaking sweet. So I'm gonna curve this to a 7. The goods are good. The goods probably even go to like a 7.5, but there's a lot of chunk in this movie that slows it down, so I got to drag the score right at a nice 7.
Yeah. Initially, I had this movie at a 7 on like my other sheet or whatever, and I actually thought I liked it more. So while I was rewatching it, we do for all these movies, and you have to sit there and try to pick it apart, and you sit there and you say, wow, this is a little bit much. This, at best, this is a good story, like you said, with a really intense thrilling sequence at the end. Mm-hmm. Cool, right? Between a 7.5 and an 8, I think that I'll go a 7.5. It is Ari Aster's best movie.
It's not saying much between two.
Well, Midsommar, I do appreciate, but Midsommar, if you want to talk about some of the weird things that he does in this movie, Midsommar's pretty off too. I mean, it's most of the time it's not grotesque. It's not horror. It's a story that you have to really lean into at the beginning, and I think it's easy to. Nathan, you've never seen it.
No.
I'm not going to say anything about it. It's different, and that's why I like Midsommar a lot. But this is the better movie. So 7.5 for me. I think it's really good for a horror movie, and there's a reason why it got so big in 2018.
It was really popular.
Yeah, but that's all.
Well, if that's all, then these movies that everybody's been coveting for, right, Dylan?
I say you pass one to the left and one to the right myself.
No,
I say I'm gonna
two to the left, one to the right.
I say I'm gonna give these to Nathan because I really like this point about if you just reshot that last scene, it would actually be pretty cool. Because I didn't think that was salvageable. So there you go. You get The Bad Nun and Insidious: The Last Key.
You'll have to tell us how good The Bad Nun is.
Yeah, The Bad Nun isn't to be confused with The Nun of La Torino or the whatever sequel it is. This is
the one with Tessa Farmiga, the nun.
Yeah.
Time to repent.
Which evidently is part of the Annabelle thing.
Yeah, it
doesn't make any fucking sense. I hate that whole thing.
I've watched one of those and they are horrendous.
Yeah, they have a whole weird horror universe.
Well, it's just I feel like those are just jump scare city. Like,
yes.
All right.
And I hate jump scares. It's just so cheap.
Yeah.
So cheap.
That being said, last but not least, we've got one last movie on this cycle. And I get it. Aha! And it's neither of those movies.
I can't believe it.
When I walked in, I was like, God dang it.
I owe you $10, Mason.
Yeah. Darn it. It wasn't going to be The Bad Nun. I had it lined up, and then he bought the DVD, and I couldn't do it. I shied away. It's too spooky.
Too good. It would have won.
Yeah, it would have sweeped. No, I'm going to go with the movie It Follows. And It Follows and I'm just going to say this as the reason why very quickly, is that
I don't even know what it is.
So many of the movies that I like in this genre are thriller because it's the moment up until the suspense that's the best. Whenever they do the reveal, as we just said, shit tanks most of the time. This is one of the few movies I think is one of the rare exceptions where they show it and it's like, oh, okay, that's not so bad. This is pretty good. All right, this is enjoyable. I like the little bait and switch on it. That's all I'm going to say about it. Go check out that video whenever it airs in the future. But that's our show, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. I see you. We're at the 20s. Who is subscribing? Who else is
Tell us who you are now.
Please tell us. Let us know in the comments who you are. If you're bots, just say, hey, I want to be your friends like you have been doing. And if you're Lucas, I see you, Lucas. I see you, buddy. You snack.
Between the four of us, 20 viewers. That's all of our friends and some.
Yeah.
So we don't know
we
anymore.
don't have that many friends.
Yeah, I mean, we're finding new people in this verse, and I don't know how we're doing it, but you know what? Keep showing your support in the comments below. Send us out. We're not a big enough channel to not see you. We see you comments, so make sure to comment.
We can even talk about them if you make a good point in the comments. We can
We'll
talk
talk to you,
about it on
period.
camera.
Make a bad point.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
make it say all these guys are terrible. We'll disagree, and we'll meet you in the comments for
Unless
it.
it's about him.
Yeah, there's one. Yeah.
I knew that was coming.
Got it.
That one was on a silver plate.
Yeah, easy
All right, let's
one.
wrap it up.
All right, guys, that's our show. Make sure to tune in next week for It Follows.
I always get that confused with the clown one.